Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and today I'm going to show you how to handle trauma. This is a topic that is very touchy, and I'm going to do the best with the way I perceive how to handle it. And also, keep in mind, everyone is different. This is only from my opinion, pure opinion. Everyone is going to handle this completely differently. And if you have any other feedback on things that I can add to this list on how to handle it, please put them in the comments below, and let's dive right into it. Thanks. So this is kind of be the first, this is the Victor mind map. This is everything from like the traits that I have, everything that comes down to me, every single trait I have when it comes to what traits who I am, and when it comes to the positive pieces of me. This is all within the sheet of the Victor mind map that I'm going to share with you. And today I'm going to talk about trauma. So I'm going to go to the trauma portion of the sheet. So starting out is, how do I deal with trauma? And first realize that trauma does not define you. It needs to be something that you look at as, hey, this happened to me, but it does not define who I am. Yes, sometimes our values do define who we are and things like that, and they do change us based off who we are. But it's important not let those scars be the determining factor of, hey, something bad happened to me, I deserve this, or whatever it may be. A lot of especially PTSD patients, they think they deserve to suffer. They don't think they ever deserve to be happy. And that you can't live your life that way. You'll live your life in misery the entire time. And it was a really interesting story behind this one therapist was having a group discussion about with PTSD people, and what they were going through. They went around. Everyone was basically telling them within their story, and there was this one person that was just always hated himself. He always blamed himself for everything, and then one day he finally just let everything out in this group discussion. Before, historically, he has never done that, and now he did, and he's telling everyone about how horrible thing he went through, and how he didn't think he deserved anything. How he never deserved to be happy for what he did, and by abandoning his teammates. And the therapist goes, "Hey, look at everyone around you right now." And there wasn't a single soul that didn't sympathize with him and have empathy for him at the end of the day. And that's so powerful, because he thought, what he imagined, that they were going to judge him and criticize him for the story that he just told, because he felt so much shame over that. But in reality, they felt empathy for him. They felt bad for him. So realize that you deserve to be happy at the end of the day. This doesn't have to define who you are as a person. And never let that counter of who you are. And never let that change. Yes, traumas will always, most of the time, change a little bit piece of who you are. They will jade you at some level. But it's important to not let that core piece of you to find happiness to ever let you change that. Everyone deserves happiness at the end of the day. No matter what the things you went through, everyone deserves happiness. No matter what. No matter what, everyone deserves happiness no matter where they are in their life. So please remember, it does not define you. Next thing, don't suppress it, okay? So a lot of the traumas that come into our lives is the trauma, you basically suppress it and try to forget about it as much as humanly possible. But once it's in your subconscious, there isn't a lot you can do with it, meaning that it's very difficult to change your perspective on it. And once you start suppressing it enough and bury it within your mind, it still ruminates in the back of your mind. You just may not realize it. So you have to really bring it into your consciousness, bring it into your awareness that it is affecting you, and then you can start doing something about it. Because there's two pieces of the mind, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind means I'm hungry. This is the signal, the subconscious automated signal that I'm hungry, I need to eat. But the conscious mind, when it starts going in there, that's you actually going to go eat something. So the conscious mind is like the signal to say, hey, I'm hungry. And then the conscious mind is the one that goes and eats it, essentially. And it's important to realize that, because that subconscious signals that you're receiving is going to automatically change who you are if you don't bring it into your conscious, because once you're conscious, you can do something about it. So please keep that in mind. Don't suppress it. And we're going to go through the next steps on once you do bring it into your conscious, what do you do from there? So the next thing is you can't change what happened to you. There is no time machine. There is nothing else that you can do to happen here. And I heard a really good story from another podcast, but basically it was something along the lines of the brain is like a forest, and each tree has a memory. Okay, and within a positive person's mind, there is more positive trees. And like every tree being a memory, there are more positive memories within that brain, increases your likelihood of the brain being positive. So the more positive trees, the more positive the forest will be. And the problem is the trauma is a very, very big negative tree. So when you have that big of a tree within your mind, it makes it where it spoils the rest of the forest. Okay? And that's why it's so hard to counter this trauma. You have to realize it's offsetting all the positive that's happened in your life, and you have to reinitiate all those positive memories that you have to counter such a big negative event within your mind, is where I'm going with that. And to realize that no matter what happens, you can never change what happened to you, but you can change is how you look at it and how it contributed to you in your future. So you might be able to say, hey, I did this horrible thing happen to me, and I hate that, but it led me to A, B, and C. So when you apply something and you give meaning to it, it means a lot less. And I'm going to go into that in the future. But once you attribute a past trauma, a past negative memory to something in the future, then it becomes the pain hurts a lot less. Meaning that you said, hey, I got in this horrible car crash, whatever it may be, but that car crash led me to me finding the love of my life, or that car crash might lead me to something else in the future. If it just recently happened, you could say, hey, I don't know why this happened to me, but I know it has a meaning to it. And you can do that if you're religious, or if you believe in fate, whatever it may be. You believe that this is the only way it could have happened to you, that this was supposed to happen. When you believe that these traumas were supposed to happen, even though it may sound horrible, it will be worth it. You just don't realize why it's worth it yet, because it's so early within it. And even if it is far away, it might take a long time to get to that point. Or you have to come to the realization that, hey, maybe it's time to change. Maybe it's time to make sure this trauma doesn't affect my life anymore. So I'm just kind of spitting out my thoughts when it comes to that. And next one is pay attention. Focus on where your attention is going. See if you're constantly bringing it up, and say to yourself, like, this happened to me, I'm moving on. Let's say if you were in a horrible car crash, for example, okay? And you have to really pay attention to things that trigger you, that start the initial memory to getting it there. For example, let's say you were in a car wreck, a horrible car wreck, and every time you start driving a car, you get scared, for example. You need to pay attention to what is the initial action that is driving that trigger, and then figuring out how you can change the trigger. Meaning that if you're afraid to drive cars now, maybe that's where you start small and you kind of just work on, like, habitually getting in the car and not driving for the first few stages, and just figuring out not to get scared to be inside the car. And then you can eventually grab the steering wheel and not drive. And then you can eventually go 10 feet, like whatever it may be. But you need to pay attention to where these traumas are bringing up. What are the initial trigger, the signs that are bringing it up in the first place? And then changing those signs if you either if you want to get rid of those triggers in general, or if you want to create the habit of getting used to the triggers where they don't affect you anymore. So those are two different ways. You could either get rid of the triggers, or you can either get rid of the or adapt yourself to the triggers where the word doesn't constantly get brought up as well. And this kind of goes to my previous point that fate exists, even though, as horrible as this may sound, that this trauma would happen to you for a reason and within your life, and there's no other way you could have avoided it. A lot of people have a lot of regret behind them, saying, oh, I wish I would have done this rather than this, and that would have changed everything. But at the end of the day, there is no time machine. And if you really believe that this was supposed to happen to you, no matter what path you went on, you're going to have a lot more, you're going to not regret it as much, and it's not going to hurt as much. And that's going to be very, very beneficial for you. The very second you give meaning to your trauma, to your bad memory, that is the very second it becomes a lot more bearable. Seriously, once you give meaning to something horrible, it becomes a lot more bearable. And I really, really do believe that, because a lot of things, the reason why it becomes so painful is because you say, wow, I don't know why God did this to me. I don't know why the universe did this to me. I can't believe that this happened to me, or whatever it may happen. But at the end of the day, like, it might not be a thing that we even find the meaning until the very end of our life. Like, that might be completely possible. Like, that trauma we could not know the meaning of that entire trauma until the very end of our life. Like, that is totally possible. But the very second you give meaning to that trauma is the very second it'll stop hurting just as much. So I'm a really big believer on giving yourself meaning behind the trauma, because I really do believe that'll make things a lot better for you. And then also, just to add on top of that, like, please make sure that you first have to have the feeling of deserving that you can be happy. You have to not be in where you're self-sabotaging and things like that, because this trauma made it where you don't deserve happiness anymore. Everyone deserves happiness at the end of the day. Everyone. And there's a lot of ways to counter that within the mind to make it where you do deserve happiness. It starts with just reactivating positive memories, and then constantly going through with, like, why are we thankful to be alive? Like, at the end of the day, like, think about it like this. We had a 1 in 4 trillion chance of being alive in the universe today. 1 in 4 trillion chance. And you have to think that there are trillions of chemical equations right now keeping you alive every single second. The amount of chemical equations just to keep you alive right now is insane. And the amount of functions that are in our body to keep us alive is insane. And in reality, we are just a bag of chemicals, and we are no different from the dirt inside the earth. No different. We are just a big bag of chemicals wound up together in a really particular way, and that is what makes us who we are. Yet, we have the feeling of life. We have the feeling of why we're here. We have the feeling of being alive. We have these emotions and things like that. And we are able to really have this feeling of life. And we're very lucky to have that type of thing. And you have to be grateful that we were even able to live this life, and also being grateful that there were much more traumatic experiences than the ones we are living in now. And I'm not saying you should one up because a lot of people also one up, like saying, oh, he didn't go through anything. I went through A, B, and C. People always one up their traumas and with the things they went through. And like it's a competition, and that really doesn't make any sense. But in this case, think about World War II. Think about World War I, where people were constantly going through death of their friends, death of their families, death of sons, daughters, and things like that, through these horrible, horrible times where they didn't have a future necessarily. And there's still a lot of reasons why to look positive on the future and to really find happiness. We're in a very a very good time to be alive. And news is going to tell you the complete opposite of why the world sucks and everything else. I'm totally aware of that. If you are constantly looking at content sources that are going to make you unhappy, you will be unhappy. I can guarantee that. The very second I start watching news every day, my YouTube videos, I'm going to be telling the world of how much the world sucks. I guarantee it. But I constantly look at positive sources. I'm constantly in positive experiences within my life that make it where I am a positive person, that I do want to display that positivity to the world. And if you constantly look for those positive sources, it will make a big difference in your mind, and you will start seeing the world in a different perspective. And I know that you're going to hear that from every single life garbage guru, coach, whatever it may be, but I'm serious. Like no matter what happens in your life, your perception on that event is always going to be negative if you look at the world as negative. It is literally ingrained in the mind, meaning that if you win the lottery, it doesn't matter how positive or negative you are. It doesn't matter how negative you are. If you win the lottery, you'll never be happy. You're going to say, oh, I wish 1.5 billion. I wish it was 2 billion. Like, these are the things that are going to go through your head if you have a negative mindset. So please don't let the trauma taint your mind, and continue to look for positive sources that are going to readapt the way you look at different memories. Because if you keep going through the same cycle that you are currently right now of you think you don't deserve happiness, or you're trying to get out of this trauma, you will continue to be unhappy. You have to break that habit. That is what I am trying to accomplish today. I am trying to get you to break the habit of what you're doing today, where you're constantly ruminating over this trauma or subconsciously suppressing it, whatever bucket you're in, and either addressing it or making it where you give value to it. And from there, that makes it where you can then feel like you deserve happiness and move on with your life to where you're living a positive and fulfilled life. Because I don't think anyone should be ruminating or constantly regretting what they went through, because at the end of the day, we cannot change it. We cannot change it. And we shouldn't even want to change it if we could. And I know how horrible that sounds. Because some people have been through some horrible, horrible things. And at the end of the day, if you give meaning to it, you say, this was supposed to happen to me. And you can even say, this was supposed to happen to me. I don't know why yet, but I know in the future, I will know exactly why it happened to me. But right now, I need to move past it and move on with my life and continue forward. And I know that's going to be very painful, and I know that's going to be a long process. It's not going to be something you can do in a day, week, month, or year. But I will say that it'll give you in the starting steps to be happier a lot faster. Because there's going to be a lot of people that experience these things to say, hey, I don't deserve it. Hey, I don't know how to get past it. Hey, I don't know how to stay positive on a daily basis. All these things. You have to realize that the brain is not designed to make you happy. The brain is designed to make you anxious and to make it where you're constantly moving forward. That is all the brain cares about. In an evolutionary sense, that's literally the only reason why the ones that procreated were the ones that were satisfied and happy did not procreate and keep going. The ones that were the greedy ones, the anxious ones, those are the ones that procreated and constantly kept pushing for more and more, That is why we are not satisfied as a society. This is why we are anxious as a society. We are the descendants of the most anxious and greedy descent of our ancestors. And that's what you have to realize, because we have to counter that pattern within our mind. You know how I said our brain is like a forest? We are born with certain sets of trees that are designed to make it where we are unhappy on a daily basis. They're there. But these are other trees that we have to plant in order to counter those other trees. That is what I'm saying today. And I want to help in the most way possible. So please let me know. This will probably be like a part series, whatever it may be. But please, I'd love to hear your thoughts and how this could be better, how I can adapt it and make this a better video for you. Thanks.